Of University of Illinois Extension, and we're delighted to have just an outstanding panel this afternoon. As you know, Extension's been in the business of taking research and putting it into a form that people can use to improve their lives. It's great if you have a solid research base, but if you can't get people to adopt it or listen to it or understand it, it doesn't do you much good. So I'm a little bit biased, but I think this session this afternoon is one of the key ones because it focuses on that very issue. How do we take information? How do we translate it? How do we make it usable and help people improve their lives? So we've got a great panel lined up this afternoon. Our final speaker just got here minutes ago, so we're good to go. We'll try and keep it online as best we can. We certainly want to give all our speakers the time to get through their presentations, and depending on how we go, I'll be the timekeeper as my main role here. So we'll start out with our keynote, Lisa Kitinoja. I hope I got that close. And I'm going to be very brief. I'm not going to read the entire list of accomplishments because they're very lengthy. I'm just going to introduce the speaker, and you can listen to them and decide that they're really good. So, Lisa, with that, I'm going to bring you up here and ask you to talk about your work. How's that for a brief introduction? The podium is yours. Lisa, let's welcome Lisa to the podium.
That's a perfect introduction. I'll just tell you that I've been working in post-harvest extension for more than 30 years, and this is the very first time that I've come to a conference that had sessions that I really wanted to sit and listen to. Almost all of our work, in the field has been research. And so now we're starting to see practical things, applied sciences, extension work, and it's just really gratifying to me to be able to see that. So my topic today, the short name is Integrating Post-Harvest Development Capacity into National Extension Services. So the topic came out of a year-long desk study that I've been doing with a team at the UN, and it's got a very long name, but it integrates all the kind of work that I've been doing over the years. So we were looking to see if we could enable more efficient national extension and advisory services by starting to integrate post-harvest topics and agro-industry issues into the extension services in order to promote development of the whole field. So we're talking about a lot of things, a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. We wanted to see if we could integrate post-harvest into the bigger scheme. So I worked on that for almost a year as a consultant. My co-authors are from different agencies in the UN. So we had the agro-industry division, the gender division, and the nutrition. So we looked at it at really wide scale. So the objective of our study was first to just review what we could find, what's going on the planet, what's the status of, which countries are actually integrating post-harvest into their extension services, what sort of networks are there out there, what sort of training opportunities, who's doing what, basically was the first question. It was a great opportunity to look around and find out what all our colleagues have been up to the last 10 years or so. So we found things. We found Nigel's blog on post-harvest. We found Virginia Tech and all the knowledge networks. We found Sabo with the animations and some of the programs going on on food waste, the Think, Eat, Save style programs, which are in a lot of different countries. We looked at the technologies that are being promoted, the PICS bags, that whole program. We looked at capacity development programs, e-courses, all kinds of training and for farmers as well as higher education. So we found all these very interesting things. the rest of our speakers today are going to cover some of those and give you some really detailed examples of what they're doing. The next objective was just to see if there were any gaps. Did we find good news and everything's covered, or were there any gaps that we could identify? And then finally, we wanted to start to think about making recommendations about how we would design and manage an expanded extension service so that it would include not just production but also post-harvest and agro-industry. And it was really a great opportunity to just start to use our imagination, because there is really no blueprint to follow, and there is no one way to do things. So we wanted to just see what there was and see what we could think about. And during this phase of the study, we came across some really great examples that are going on right now, like the e-course that the University of Illinois has been doing. And we were curious, why isn't that being done on lots of other topics? Why is it just on post-harvest handling of grain? There are hundreds of other foods that people are interested in. We found e-learning programs, but they're very small. So why are they so tiny? Why aren't they covering thousands of people? Why are they just a few? So we went through a lot of different ideas and scenarios and discussed with a lot of people, what are you doing and how could it be really used by others? So the methods we used were 3. We did literature searches online and in libraries. We did key informant surveys, and we got results from 20 countries. And then we did in-depth case studies in just 4 countries. So the idea was that we wanted to be very inclusive and go across the whole board. We wanted to look at countries that have been trying to embrace these newer value chain oriented approaches all the way from the farm to the market. We wanted to look at countries that are just starting to get involved in those things and starting to think about how they would integrate post-harvest into their extension. And then we wanted to look at some that have not really tried much, or maybe they tried it but it didn't work too well. So we wanted to make sure we included as wide a range as possible. So according to our key informants, who were an extraordinary bunch of people that were very well educated about what's going on in their country, 20% of those people could not even tell us who was doing anything in post-harvest in their extension service. There were usually research things they could point to, or maybe a university professor who was teaching a class or something. But for extension, there was just nothing. About 80% could actually list specific things, like maybe projects or the title of a program or something that was happening, but they couldn't give us very much detail about the numbers of people involved, or how they were doing things, or what specifics of the entire value chain or the post-harvest system that were being investigated. It was sort of random. And from my recollection, a lot of it was storage. So you could look at an entire country and just find a project on storage representing the post-harvest sector. And really the bottom line was that even though there is some activity going on, in general, it's still on production. And so some of the production-oriented programs had a little piece of post-harvest in them. So our case studies were then an attempt to get a little deeper and find out what exactly are some countries doing, and maybe they would be good models for other countries to follow, or maybe they've learned lessons that they could share with other countries. And what we went through was the case studies in Ethiopia had a lot of interesting things about the government being involved as a policymaker and promoter of new post-harvest technologies. Gender relations came up a lot. Integrating smallholders became a really critical thing. And the idea of being able to combine the work that we're doing to reduce food losses with the work that people are doing to improve nutrition made it much more powerful and much more likely to be getting the attention of policymakers. So rather than talk about just one little box of we're post-harvest specialists or we're agro-processors, being able to combine forces with the professionals who are working on nutrition, working on gender issues, working with smallholders, it just made it a lot more powerful, and the case studies were able to give us examples of that. So our final goal of, the reason we were doing this whole thing was to come up with some sort of a plan to make a sort of framework for different countries that could follow it. So obviously, after looking at this much complexity, we were not going to just give somebody a prescription and say, okay, do this. So what we came up with instead was sort of a series of assessments that would help each country identify what was really important to them and then move forward on that. So if you remember the old version of the extension service, it always starts with a farmer and an extension worker and a researcher in those triple circles. So what we did was we just expanded the farmer to include more than farming. We want that to be the value chain, so it includes the farmers and the handlers and the whole agro-industry through if there's processing and definitely marketing and things like that. And then we looked at how could we also expand the national research and expand the National Extension Service to be able to cover those things. And what we came up with was looking at the entire global network that exists now, and the people in this room are a great example of that global network. We realized that each country does not need to develop all of their own in-house expertise on every single issue and every single topic, but they could tap into this global network. And organizations that are already offering services and support could help to reach those countries. So especially with low-cost program planning support and technical training, it's definitely out there in a world of e-courses and MOOCs. I mean, we can all reach a lot of people. And then there was a lot of just general extension information available. So monitoring, evaluation, learning about it and doing it, there's a lot of support in that. So what our new version of the expanded extension service in any country looks like is it still has those original three pieces of the farmer value, the value chain, plus extension service and research. But each of those has now expanded out to touch the global network. So the food producers and the agro-industry is supported by all kinds of global alliances and trade industry, the GAP people and the people who do the GAIN and these kinds of networks and alliances for the farming and the handlers of food. Then the research side is really supported now, rather than just a one-to-one personal relationship that you have between you or your institution and another institution. There's all these online networks. So if you need a collaborator or you need someone to coordinate things with or talk about problems with, you can easily reach them. And because of the new internet technologies, like Skype and GoToMeeting and these things, it becomes extremely inexpensive to do this kind of networking. The third piece is the extension area. And that's the one that we started to find all kinds of really interesting NGOs that are helping with post-harvest extension. The universities are doing it, the on the field, the ground people are doing it, and they're all having websites, and they're sharing their information. So if you're a subject matter specialist now, you're not limited to what's in the library of your local university or your office. You can use the global library, and you can talk to other people who do the kind of work that you do, and you can really network and expand. So all of this new expanded system is supported by the large international donor agencies. So it's really important to include them in any plan that we're thinking about making at either the national level or the regional level. So the basic question is, how do we do it? How do we build the post-harvest capacity in countries? And so we came up with what we'll call guidance or a framework. And we just want to go through some really simple, if you're an extension agent or if you've worked in an extension service or on any kind of project that does outreach, these will be very familiar steps. But what we're talking about now is making sure that post-harvest is integrated into these steps. And we're not just talking about producing food. So we have a different set of resource people, basically, and we have a different topic area. So we review the current status, we select a crop or maybe a group of related crops, we talk to the clientele groups to find out what they think their problems are, what's their most important things. We talk to the trainers, the extension people, find out, do you have the capacity to reach these needs, or do you need training? Do you need in-service or upgrade of your training? And then at the level of the administration, I would need to make whatever investment was needed and make sure that I had the resources and the support for my people to be able to deal with whatever the client needs were. And then I would need to start planning the programs, the local ones, things that are really going to make a difference. And of course, finally, monitor and evaluate that to make sure that I was really hitting the mark. So as a visual, it looks like a circle. And it starts out with small tasks. So step one is just kind of look at the current needs, and then it grows a little bigger. Step three, do your assessment, with participatory assessments with clientele. 4, find out what the extension service and the people who are doing the training need. Then it grows very big. In number 5, we're going to make improvements and changes, and we're going to actually address any gaps that we have found. And then 6, finally, put some resources into the actual training and extension outreach efforts, the advisory services that are being offered. Make sure what's being done matches what those people are telling you they need in their post-harvest and agro-processing area. Now, I was thinking that maybe at this point, it could be sort of competitive. So you've trained people to become post-harvest specialists or people with skills in post-harvest. And now you're saying, here are your skills, here are the needs, who has the best ideas? How are we going to do it? And so at the government level, an annual competition, for example, to see who could divvy up the funding that was available for training that really targeted the specific needs that had just been identified, I think would go a long way to making a difference. It can actually be fun. And in Tanzania, there's an example. Every year they have the extension service at the subject matter specialist level write small proposals. And they'll choose just the ones that they think have the most current specificity and, you know, that are targeted to really current problems. And they'll fund them. So those extension workers then can be leaders of a program. And they can go forth and try it. You know, it's part of their job. Now they can go try it. So what's the next step? We have this plan, we have this huge paper. It's like 200 pages long with hundreds and hundreds of references and, you know, just many, many, many ideas coming in from everywhere. So what are we going to do? We're calling this framework the 7 Steps Model. So the future plan for maybe sometime next year is to start to ask people for proposals of how they would use it, and then doing some sort of field study or pilot test to make sure that we can have a proof of concept. Thinking about 2 or 3 countries, and just as I said, each country would just choose the crop that they're most interested in. But we actually want to do it. We want to go through those steps, collect the data, find out, do people use the information? Do they reduce losses? Do they make more money? Do they have a positive experience? You know, would this be something that can be integrated into the national system? And is it something that people would enjoy doing? And so all of those things have to be monitored and evaluated, and then some final conclusion can be reached. I'll have just one final grandiose idea, because I like to throw those out just in case the universe is listening. If we go through the pilot and everything works out and people actually learn things and reduce food losses, then I would like to see a global fund put together for this. Because obviously the world's aware of food losses, and they know something has to be done. And these research people have developed hundreds of possible things that can be shared. So how and how quickly can we do it? And the way to do it is through enhanced extension services. So thank you.
Well, Lisa, thanks. That was just a wonderful way to start out and challenge us with several opportunities to move forward. It fits in perfectly with the rest of the session. And in the interest of time, I'm going to hold your questions until the end. We want to give the last speaker as much time as the first speaker, so we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get through their material. But please do write your questions down. I think Lisa gave us a lot to think about, and we look forward to continuing that discussion over the rest of the conference.